Good morning everyone from a very sunny and very beautiful Faro, where we're going to have a chat about Sunderland 1, Sevilla 1 and have a look through some of your questions as well, as we always do on the whistle. Nice to be back with normal games to talk about, back to the usual routine. Now, for those of you who absolutely love it when I drink my coffee during videos, I'm delighted to say that just because I'm in Portugal doesn't mean that I don't have coffee. I've got my coffee, so we're all ready to go. Look, yeah, Sunderland 1, Sevilla 1, lots to unpack from the game, but I think I would start with the extra caveat, if you like. We always caveat sort of when we talk about pre-season games that it's about minutes at the season. You shouldn't read too much into it. And I think that's even more the case with last night's game, because it was a little bit of a mismatch in both halves, if that makes sense, because Sevilla probably fielded their weaker squad. From speaking to people at the game, speaking to Bris afterwards, they probably fielded their weaker squad in the first half when Sunderland was stronger, and probably Sevilla fielded a stronger squad in the second half when Sunderland had a little bit more of a makeshift team out, especially in defence. And I want to give a shout out to those 4 young lads in defence, because not only were the academy players playing against top European opposition, quite a few of those lads were operating out of position. Tom Lavery had a shift across to centre half. He's a right back. Harrison Jones, as we all know, is definitely not a left back, but he put in a really good shift as he did at South Shields. So huge credit to those guys. Whatever them we're talking about, we just have to put a little bit into that context, if you like. Now, I thought that in both halves, really, there were huge positives for Sunderland, albeit very clearly Sevilla dominated the second half. And I think that the equaliser was really harsh, because it looked like Sunderland had done enough to win the game, and they had a huge opportunity when, I don't want to criticise Ahmed Abdullahi, because it was a brilliant bit of play that he almost fashioned the one-on-one for himself, bursting away from 2 defenders from nowhere, moved so well to getting on goal, and then just couldn't work out whether he should be greedy or selfish. Should he go for goal, or should he square for Wilson Isidore? In the end, hesitating, allowing the defence to recover, and then obviously that cruel twist of fate where Sevilla go and score at the other end. And I think the main positives from a Sunderland perspective very clearly is that they played well in the first half, and that I think that some of the combinations from the new lads who haven't played together a lot already look pretty good. So the midfield 3 of Siddiqui, Habib Diarra and Enzo Lefebvre I thought were really impressive. Siddiqui, straight away you just get a feeling for a player that you're going to enjoy watching. That guy plays with so much passion, even in a pre-season friendly. Covers so much ground. He was playing as the deepest line midfielder, but I thought what was really interesting was that there was clearly a lot of licence to rotate. So there were times where Siddiqui was jumping out and pressing and going and being really aggressive. There were times in possession where he was driving forward with the ball, and Diarra or even Lefebvre sometimes were just tucking in. So lots of rotations, and I thought that they really dominated their opposition, and they gave Sunderland a good control of the game. I thought Adingra looked sharp, as you would expect, a threat cutting in from the left, and as he always was. Eliza Mienda was a handful. I think some of the refereeing was, I think, fair to say, relatively dubious. I don't think I'm being unreasonable in making that comment. On another day, Mienda could have had a couple of penalties and Sunderland would have been out of sight. So I think some clear positives there. Even in the second half, when Sevilla dominated, I think you have to give credit to, as I say, that back 4 for dropping in, defending well, sticking to their task, even though it was really tricky at times. Dan Neil and Alan Brown in centre midfield gave them decent protection. It wasn't a game where they were able to show too much of their sort of attacking prowess, but they were disciplined and they did put a shift in. And there were times where Sunderland looked a threat. I thought Isidore looked lively as well, which is always good to see. He caused some problems on the break with his pace. So, yeah, lots to take from the game. I think Sunderland will be happy enough with the workout, despite a late goal, which, as we always say, pre-season results don't matter too much. One of the really interesting things was chatting to Bris after the game. He did say that, I asked him, I said, because I was expecting a bit more of a mixed team, so sort of experience and youth in both halves. It was very obvious that the first 11 seemed significantly stronger than the second. And so I said to Bris, am I reading too much into it, or is it fair to say that at this point, you're starting to drill down on working with the core of the team that's going to start the season? And he basically said, no, that's right. He said, I don't have time to waste. I've got 3 weeks. I want to start working on the core of the team. Now, that came with a major caveat. He said it's obvious that there are a few players in the second half team who could easily come into our first team. I don't really need to name them, but Dan Neil, Wilson Isidore, Patrick Roberts, I think the 3 probably obvious main ones. They'll still definitely feel like they've got a way of fighting a chance of fighting their way into the starting 11 for the start of the season. But it's clear that Bris seems to have drawn a little bit of a line in the sand and is starting to drill down now on those combinations that he wants to work with. And because of that, I thought there were some positive signs in those rotations. I think it's clear that Sunderland are adding a lot of athleticism, a lot of pace to their team for the season ahead. I think that's clearly what they've identified as really important as they adjust to Premier League level. And I think the signs that the players they've brought in are encouraging, albeit, as I keep saying, we don't get too carried away. So let's go through and have a look at some of your questions, because thank you so much for sending them all in, because there were absolutely loads, which was great. So I want to start off just with a little injury update. I've got a question here, but before I'll just talk a little bit about Romain Mundle, a lot of speculation and what have you over the last few days. As I reported on Friday night, my understanding is that he picked up an injury in training this week. Unfortunately, Bris has confirmed it's a recurrence of his, by the way, there's currently Europe's second largest motorcycle rally going on in Faro this weekend, so if you hear any motorcycles, that's why. Apologies for that. Yeah, Romain Mundle unfortunately has suffered a recurrence of his hamstring injury that he obviously had twice last season. Bris confirmed he had surgery yesterday. It's a huge shame. Such a talented young player, such a hard worker. You just will feel like he's just not getting any luck and desperately needs a break. Really feel for him, because I think he was fantastic last season. He looked so sharp at South Shields, took his goal so well, the way he covered the ground to create the opportunity. A real shame for him. And Sunderland don't have an exact time frame yet, because they're still waiting to see how the surgery settles and what have you. But it's pretty clear he's not going to be around to start the season, so that's a big blow for Sunderland. The positive side of it is that we understand the surgery, and Mundle himself has said that the surgery was successful. So hopefully, in taking this approach, they can get to the bottom of it, and it will mean that he's on the sidelines for a while, but they actually correct the issue for good, because I think they try to manage the injury quite conservatively this summer in the hope that it wouldn't need surgery. But I think the fact that the injury has happened again has pushed them down that road. So sending our best to Romain. Really hope this is kind of the start of the comeback in the end, although it'll be a huge setback at the end of those hamstring issues. So Stu says, why were Anthony Patterson, Nectar Triantis and Chris Rigg not involved? Yeah, I asked Bris about this after the game. All three of them were there, so nothing to worry about. Bris said there were no injuries as such. It was just sort of the feedback from training was that their workload had to be managed, and they were potentially a bit of a cliche, but in the red zone, if you like, and that someone just had to keep an eye on them. So I think there's a chance that all three of them will be involved in tomorrow's game against Sporting Lisbon. If not, they'll certainly be involved in the next couple of weeks. They've been out here training. Rigg's been at full tilt pretty much, I think, this week. So I don't think there's anything major to worry about there. Albeit, I think Rigg especially will be absolutely desperate to get on that pitch, because he knows that there's competition for places and he'll want to be staking his claim. So, question here from Michael and Paul, I'll read them both out, but fairly similar. Is that midfield that started the game tonight lining up against West Ham in your opinion, Phil? Me personally think they've got it all them three. And Paul says, what do you think is Dan Neil's role in the team this season? Already looks like Bris has his first choice 70 million midfield three. This is a really difficult question to answer. As I say, for sure, Bris was quite clear after the game that he's working on combinations that he wants to see start the season. So it looks like those three are in pole position. I would always say that sometimes we can get a little bit fixated on the opening game of the season, and it's very often the case in football that within 3-4 weeks the team looks very different. So just because a midfield three or whatever starts the season doesn't mean they're going to continue there. I think that Siddiqui made a good impression last night, and I think he has put his hand up to start the season in that 6th role, because, as I say, he's got such good defensive awareness and gets about the pitch so well. He's such an athlete and looks like he can pick a pass. Obviously, Enzo Lefebvre is going to be in the team. That guy, sometimes he gives the ball away, but you just got to accept it, because the stuff he does, the opportunities he creates are just unbelievable. So yeah, Enzo Lefebvre is going to be in the team. I just absolutely love watching that guy play football. It's such a treat. It really brings home how far we've come over the last few years. And listen, Habib Diarra is the club record sign. He's going to be playing, and I realise athleticism for what it's worth and how he runs in behind and creates space. So Daniel's definitely got a job in his hands, there's no two ways about that. But as I say, I can't stress enough that Bris made very clear that there were players in that second half team who still have a chance of getting in that 11. And Daniel will be one of those. Still a massive part of Sunderland's plans, let's not make any mistake about it. It's a long season, there's going to be injuries, there's going to be dips and forms. We know players are going to be going to the African Cup of Nations. There's going to be all manner of opportunities for Neil to fight his way into this team, and I expect that if he stays and that contract situation gets sorted, I expect that he'll play a lot of football this season. But there's absolutely no doubt all the same that last night underlined that not just Dan Neil, players like Patrick Roberts, Wilson Isidore, a lot of players in this group have got a huge, Dennis Serkin when he's back fit, have got huge competition for places now. The bar is being raised, there's absolutely no two ways about it. Okay, so a question from Akko and Michael, who say, Akko says, great to get to see these signings, but when will we get a centre back? Surely we must get one in soon to gel with the team. Michael says, now with the front line seemingly sorted, is the priority now to get a top quality centre half in? Feel like that second half showed just how thin we are in that area of the pitch currently. Undoubtedly, it has to be kind of the big transfer priority now for Sunderland. I think that obviously the Loriente deal became really important, especially with that Mundell injury, because that just gives them more cover and depth and competition and firepower out wide and through the middle. So that was a really important one, so I can totally see why Sunderland have moved on that quickly. I think it's very clear that the defence is the big area of the pitch where, especially with Luke O'Nien injured, Sunderland at the moment just don't look Premier League ready. And I think, as you say, massive credit to those young lads, but clearly the second half showed that. I spoke to Bris after the game and he made very clear that the club were absolutely aware of this. So much transfer work going on out in here in Faro this week, I can't stress that enough. Florian Gisolfi's out here, Stuart Harvey is out here, Kirill Louis-Dreyfus is out here, Christian Speakman's out here. You know, Bris is spending half his time coaching and the other half in recruitment meetings. So this is something that they're absolutely across. You know, Bris basically told me, you know, kind of summed up Sunderland's dilemma to me where, listen, they want a high calibre centre half. They want someone who can come in a little bit like some of these players have in other positions of the pitch, and you straight away go, yeah, okay, this is a Premier League player, this is an upgrade. And I think you can see that in some of the players that we've already seen linked. There will be others whose names aren't out there, but Diakite from Lille, John Lasumi from Bologna, we're talking about, you know, players really experienced at the top level. So I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever that Sunderland are looking for a high calibre player, and that means that you have to be patient. And I think that's what's going on at the moment. Sunderland are trying to get the right target, but what Bris did also say to me is, we understand that we don't have time to waste, we need to be ready for the start of the season. So I would expect that to develop in the not too distant future, to be honest. I think Sunderland understand that they need to get that business done. So I think that's definitely, yeah, very definitely one to watch. I think we probably will at some point in the next few weeks see movement on the goalkeeper front as well. I think it's clear that Sunderland wants some top level competition for Anthony Patterson as well. So I still think those are two big things to look forward in the coming weeks. Gordon says, do we get defenders on loan, or does the club keep surprising us by buying us what we need? Don't get me wrong, I think we're doing really good business this time around. Long may it continue. Gordon, I think you sum up everyone's feelings. Excited, pleased, but also would like more, and I think that's totally fine. I think, as I say, I think the club are not done yet in terms of those big acquisitions. I think there's still a couple to come, centre half being one, potentially, depending on the target, goalkeeper being another. I wouldn't be surprised if they used the loan mark Gordon. I think one of the things that last night did show is that there's a talented core here, but the depth isn't quite there, and I wouldn't be surprised if they use the loan mark to sort of flesh that out. But I do think there's still a couple of significant signs to come, Gordon. I think it's clear that they want upgrades in the kind of the spine of the pitch still. And so I think we might have one or two more of those exciting here we goes from Fabrizios to come somewhere down the line. Ross says, obviously defensive reinforcements are needed, but do you think a full pre-season for Sealt and Huggins may at least put them in mind for a squad place this season, or a loan if when new players come in? Well, I think that's definitely the case in terms of a loan at the very least, Ross. I think obviously Nectar Triantis was, as I mentioned, they were managing his workload, so didn't feature last night, but I think the fact that Sealt has started alongside Ballard in both the senior first team friendlies this season tells you he's made an impression. I have to say, he's used his time out of the game really, really well. He is so much, he is an absolute athlete now. He's huge, so much strength. And we knew he'd be comfortable in possession when he first arrived, stepping out with the ball. We'd seen that in his opening appearances. So the fact that he's built that strength so much gives him a huge opportunity. I think the centre halves will arrive, and I think the thing for Sealt is at his age and after so long out, I think he needs to be playing. So I'm not sure personally that a squad role is potentially great for Sealt this season. I think if it's clear that he's not going to get minutes, I think it's right for him to go out on loan. But I agree with you, Ross, that he's come back looking really, really strong, and putting in mind that in the long term, and I'd put Abdullahi in the same category, there are players here who could have a role in future seasons, even if this season might just come a little bit too soon. Yeah, really excited by both Sealt and Abdullahi. As for Huggins, listen, I think it's a no-brainer for the time being to have Huggins around because he looks sharp, but so nearly produced an assist from Mayanda yesterday. Nice little flick from Lafayette, set him away in the channel. Maybe just the cross was slightly too heavy for Mayanda, but yeah, really good bit of play, defensively sound, and the fact that he can cover both full-back positions, if he's fit, I think he's an absolutely huge asset to the squad. And I think that realistically for Huggins this season, I think, yes, he'll want game time, but he just needs to stay fit and get minutes and get long spells of training under his belt. So for me, I would like to just keep Huggins around for the foreseeable. Really, if you go out and recruit loads more defenders and more fullbacks, then fair enough. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of a no-brainer to get him in the team, keep him playing. I'm absolutely thrilled to see him back looking sharp and playing well. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up fairly soon because I've been talking on at you for quite a while. Chris says, unfortunately couldn't see the game. Would just like an first impression of the new lads. Well, hopefully I've talked about Siddiqui there. Gets across the ground a lot of passion in his play, really dynamic, likes to press, likes to tackle. Adingra, pretty much as you would expect, to be honest, likes to cut in off the right and try and get a shot away, dribbles well. To be honest, quite similar, Chris, to all the left wingers that Sunderland signed, and I think that's a good thing. They know what kind of players work in their system and they go out and get them, so positive signs from that. Chemstein Talby, I have to say, had a quiet half, not reading too much into that. It was his first game. As I say, it's pre-season. One really good little bit of play where he burst in off the left, drove across a couple of defenders and had a really powerful shot. Unfortunately, it was straight at the goalkeeper who could catch it, but I think that showed that he's got pace and he's got dribbling, but he wasn't really quite able to impose himself on the game, so look forward to seeing a little bit more of him against Sporting Lisbon tomorrow, and I'll give you I'll chat about a bit more after that. So yeah, I'm going to wrap it up there because I've managed to talk for 16 minutes somehow. I'm trying to think if there's any other bits of business I haven't mentioned. Yeah, Loriente's had his medical yesterday, I believe, so would expect that to be wrapped up in the not too distant future, providing all is well on that front. And also Ray Nildo was there watching the team last night, so he has now joined in with his teammates. He was heading to the team camp last night to meet everyone and get settled. I don't think he'll be involved on Monday night in terms of the game. I think that Sunderland will just get him up to speed. They don't need to rush him. He was playing a lot of football quite recently because he was involved in the Club World Cup, so I don't think his fitness will take too much topping up. Sunderland really confident that he'll be ready for the start of the season, which is obviously massive, but just a few steps to go through before we see him. So yeah, there we go. I think I'm going to call it there. Thanks so much for watching. Sort of on the whistle tour diary hybrid, if you like. I'll be back tomorrow just to have a chat about things. I'm not sure what yet, we'll wait and see. And then hopefully, well, I will definitely be reviewing the Sporting Lisbon game here as well, whether it's out here in Faro or maybe when I'm back home, I'm not sure, but just keep your eyes on the YouTube channel. There'll be plenty of stuff coming. Sounds like motorcycles are starting to come through the square, so I'm gonna call it before the sound gets too loud. Thanks so much for watching.